Cece. I'm the registered dietitian with Kanema Fitness. This month we're talking all about stress. So we're going to talk a little bit about stress and the relationship with nutrition. In this video today, we're going to talk about that connection between stress and our GI tract, as well as some tips that we can do to help manage our stress in terms of planning meals and being on top of that. And we're also going to go through a recipe for a balanced snack. So like I said, there is a relationship between stress and our GI tract function. And what that comes down to is our nervous system. So when you're stressed, your nervous system is going to kick in and it's going to interfere with the physiological function of your GI tract. So if you ever heard the term fight or flight, that's exactly what's going on when you're stressed. So when you're under stressed, your body is doing whatever it can to help you survive that stressful trigger. So whether it's a chronic stressful situation, it could be being sick or being stressed at work or stressed with a particular project or even a situation. So whenever your body is starting to feel that stressful trigger or stressful moment in life, it's starting to go into that fight or flight mode. So when it does that, it's sending the blood flow to all of your vital organs that are needed to help you make it through that stressful situation. So what happens is, as a result of your body making sure that your essential organs for that situation are taken care of, it's lessening the amount of blood flow and function that's happening in your GI tract. So as a result of that, your hunger cues are not working as efficiently or as effectively as they are at baseline or when you're feeling well. So because of that, a lot of times we start to ignore how we're feeling because our hunger cues are not activated. So that means we aren't necessarily eating as much, or maybe we're not thinking about food when we typically would be, as a reminder to go and eat your meal or eat a snack. So with that, that's typically why we're not eating enough when we're stressed. But a lot of people sometimes will end up overeating during stressful situations, and usually that is because, once again, the hunger cues are not there, but also those fullness cues are not there. Whenever we are ignoring our hunger cues, whether it be because they're not signaling off because of stress, or if maybe you're just not in tune to listening to them, or whatever the reason might be, a lot of times you'll feel those hunger cues later on in the day, and they might also contribute to almost binge eating, or maybe eating something that you typically wouldn't at that time, or eating a little bit more. Because at the end of the day, your body is trying to make sure that you get enough calories so that you can continue to fuel yourself adequately. And it may not just look kind of the way that you typically would make it look in a day-to-day situation. So, like I said, when you're stressed, your hunger cues are not going to work as efficiently. So it's going to cause you to, a lot of times, skip meals. And when those hunger cues are not working as efficiently, sometimes your fullness cues are not working as efficiently. So you're not noticing that you are done with your meal, or maybe you're not feeling as full, or as are not getting that signal saying that I'm done to eat. So, like I said, we're not getting the hunger cues to tell us to eat. We're not getting the fullness cues to tell us to stop eating. And then as a result of not getting the hunger cues, you're more likely to start to overeat later at night to make up for the lack of eating earlier on in the day. So that is part of the physiological components of stress and how it affects our nutrition and what we tend to eat. We also have the behavioral components that include, sometimes maybe we're stressed, so we don't want to think about adding in that extra 30 minutes to make a meal, or take that extra minute to step away from your workspace to go have your lunch. And so when we think about those behavior actions, sometimes those negatively impact us further, because even though that would have been only 30 minutes to prepare the lunch ahead of time, you're kind of setting yourself backwards in the sense where Maybe you're not going to eat a balanced meal for your lunch now because you didn't prepare that meal. Or maybe you are going to skip lunch altogether because you're a little stressed, and that's going to cause you to crash and burn a little bit later on in the day, versus if you took the time to step back from your workstation and enjoy your lunch so that you could fuel yourself, so that your brain is working as efficiently as possible later on for the second half of the day. You might have solved your situation of, being a little bit farther behind in your work, or maybe you would think a little bit more clearly so that you could solve that problem that you couldn't think of a little bit earlier on in the day. So even though it sounds counterintuitive, sometimes taking the moment for yourself to take a little break from your work to fuel yourself can save you a little bit more time in the day. So going on also with the behavior piece of it and combining it with the physiological component of stress and how it affects our GI tract. So when we aren't really feeling hungry, it's hard to think about eating a full meal. So sometimes when you aren't feeling as hungry, a few things can be beneficial. So one, just trying to eat something might spark the GI tract to function fully again, and might spark those hunger cues to reemerge. Because when you are sending food down that GI tract, then the blood is going to start to go towards the GI tract and it's going to start to work efficiently again. So sometimes the first step is just eating a little something, or even drinking a little bit of a smoothie, or something that's a little bit easier to tolerate in those moments where you can't even think about eating. Just something to go throughout the GI tract to get all of the receptors in your body functioning for the GI tract. So that's option one. Option two is to focus on small, frequent meals throughout the day. So if you can't think about, consuming 3 meals as you typically do, think about breaking them up. Maybe have lunch be split into 2, so it's 2 kind of bigger snacks than you typically would have as a snack, to kind of make up for the lack of not having lunch. And maybe that would cause a little bit less stress in the day, thinking in terms of planning and preparing a meal. Maybe the snack is a little bit easier to prepare. Maybe your GI tract will tolerate it a little bit more, because if you are in that acute phase of stress where you can't really digest as optimally as you typically are, sometimes the smaller content of food might feel a little bit better for your GI tract, especially if you're experiencing some GI symptoms. So making those balanced snacks more of a priority when you're thinking of times where you cannot tolerate a full meal might be beneficial. As always, I want to reiterate the importance of having balanced meals and snacks. So whenever we're having a balanced meal, you want to make sure at least half of your plate is fruits and vegetables. A quarter of your plate is going to be lean proteins, and then the last quarter of your plate are going to be your starchy vegetables and whole grains. So making that balanced portion of each of those food groups are going to be helpful to make sure that you're getting all of your essential nutrients and balancing it out into the correct proportions. And then along with that, whenever we have a snack, we like to think about a carb paired with a protein. That's going to keep us fuller for a longer period of time and also help us feel more rejuvenated and enjoy our snack. Going off of that speed, we are going to go into our recipe, which is going to be a nice balanced snack. It's easy to prepare and to have pre-prepped for the week. So another tip when you're in stressful times and to kind of avoid adding to the stress is, when you find a pocket of time that works well with your schedule, go ahead and pre-make some things that take a little bit more time, but that you're able to store safely for the week or maybe even 2 weeks. So that could be preparing things for breakfast so that you can put it in the freezer or in the fridge for a designated period of time, depending on what that food item is. That can mean preparing a snack or preparing snack items, whether that's chopping up veggies to have with hummus, or maybe just making sure that all of your fruit is pre-washed so that you can just grab it and go, or that could even mean preparing our special recipe for today. One last thing about a tip for preparing for your meals is start your week off right by planning out the meals that you're gonna need. So what ingredients go into the meals? What time are you gonna eat these meals? How are you gonna prepare them? When are you gonna prepare them? Kind of think about the things that you typically don't think about until last minute. So then when you are at the grocery store, you can think about that as efficiently and make it a little bit easier for yourself later in the week. So if that means, I don't know when I'm gonna be able to make lunch this week because I have a huge project due and I can't see myself spending, 30 minutes making lunch the night before, then maybe that means find a more convenient lunch option so that you have it prepared, you have your brain fuel, and then it's ready to go without wasting time in the kitchen for that meal. Again, questions like that, you can always reach out to me and I'd be happy to help you more one-on-one with situations. But let's get started with today's recipe. So today's recipe is going to be protein balls. You've definitely seen these before. They're very popular, but I figured these are a great balanced snack. And so we'll go through why they're balanced, why they're a great easy snack. I love that they're portable. So this is great for a stressful situation because you can batch make them ahead of time, and they're delicious, and you can even get creative with them and add all of your favorite things. So we're gonna get started on that now. So what is so great about this recipe is that it is completely customizable to the season, to your preferences, or what you're even in the mood for. So we're just gonna do the basic recipe for today and load it in with fiber and some omega-3s, as well as making sure that we're including a little bit extra protein as well. So we're gonna start with our oats. So I have some rolled oats right here, and we are going to pour 1.5 cups into a bowl. So like I said, today's protein balls are gonna be a little bit more on the basic side, just to allow you some creativity with your future protein balls. So these are going to be with rolled oats, peanut butter, flax seeds, and some chia seeds. I've made in the past during fall protein balls with pumpkin puree for a nice pumpkin flavor one. I've done ones with chocolate chips or even like M&Ms before for a little bit of a sweet addition. I've added nuts, like walnuts have worked well, even like crushed pecans have been good. So you really can do whatever feels right for you or something that you're interested in. I've also done them with protein powder before too, but today we're gonna just do it with our ingredients that I listed already. So now that the oats are in the bowl, we are going to pour a little bit of ground flax seeds. And you might have heard me say before that we always want to use ground flax seeds when making things like this because our body is not able to digest whole flax seeds. So although whole flax seeds are cute to add on baked goods and they look pretty on the piece of bread that you might make, our body can't digest them, so you just excrete them out. So you always want to make sure that they're ground flax seeds to get the most nutritional benefit from them. So I'm just adding a little bit to taste, and so we can mix it in probably about a tablespoon or so. And I'm gonna do the same with chia seeds. So both the chia seeds and the flax seeds are gonna provide some extra fiber for us and provide a little bit of extra protein. Not all that much, but a little extra. So I'm just gonna mix that in so that it's evenly distributed with the oats. And then now we're gonna take a cup of peanut butter and mix it in. So like I said, this is a balanced snack. So we have our oats for a nice whole grain. We have our peanut butter providing healthy fats, and we get some protein from the peanut butter as well as the flax seeds and the chia seeds. So whenever we have protein and healthy fats and fiber, those are going to help us feel fuller for a longer period of time. So protein stays in our stomach for a longer period of time than carbohydrates. Healthy fats and just fat in general, they stay in our stomach for even longer as well. So that's why sometimes after you eat something that's really high in fat, you might feel a little bloated or even a little bit more sluggish, and that is because of the delayed gastric emptying. So it means that it's just a longer period of time of that food staying in your stomach. And then fiber actually helps slow down the transit time of the foods throughout the GI tract. So when we're eating these protein balls, for instance, you're gonna feel that feeling of sensation for a little bit while longer, but you're also fueling your brain with the carbohydrates. So then that way you can think a little bit more clearly. And a lot of times with those feelings of stress, just eating something might help reduce the stress that you're already feeling. And so of course this is not going to negate, those actual stressors that are occurring, but this can help you kind of feel a little bit more confident into problem solving those situations, help you think a little bit more clearly, help you feel a little bit more calm so that you can go on and tackle those hard things that you have to deal with. So I'm just gonna go ahead and add the peanut butter into this mixture. So if you want, you are welcome to add some honey for flavor. It would also help to bind the balls a little bit more together. But today I am going to just add water instead of adding honey because honestly I don't have enough honey to have on hand to use it for this recipe, and I don't use honey frequently enough to justify opening it. So that is why I'm not using honey, but I've used it before and it tastes delicious, and it can help increase the amount of calories and the amount of carbs that are in this. So if that works towards your carbohydrate goals, then that is great. But if maybe you are maybe wanting to make sure that you are only adhering to a certain amount of carbs per meal and per snack, then adding the water instead of the honey might be a better alternative. Okay, so I'm just gonna mix it up really quickly, and once it's all mixed up, I'm gonna add the water in. And really, the water is just until it gets to the consistency that you want to see. So that will adjust as needed. I'm actually noticing that mixing this up, I might even need to add a little bit more peanut butter. So again, it's not a perfect science with this recipe, sometimes depending on the type of peanut butter you're using or depending on how well the peanut butter is mixed, that might determine how much peanut butter you need or even how much water you need as well. So, it's starting to mix pretty well. We're getting this mixture like this right here, if you can see. I'm gonna go over, add just a little bit of water, and then try to start forming these balls together. So now that it's all mixed, I am just going to grab some gloves so that I can form the balls. If you are making them for yourself, you do not need to wear cooking gloves, but if you're sharing with friends outside of your home, it never hurts to have some gloves on just to make sure that you're being extra sanitary. So I washed my hands and I'm adding the gloves. And honestly, these are a little sticky because of the peanut butter, so this just makes it a little bit more comfortable for me to go through it and make the shape. So you can really make this whatever size you want. If you want to make it so that you're pairing it with maybe yogurt, so it's topping a yogurt, you can make them really small. If you want them just to be by themselves, you can make them a little bit bigger. I'm gonna make a few kind of this size. So it's maybe 2 or 3 bites in one ball. And then I think I'm gonna make a couple smaller ones too, so I can top some yogurt or even like cottage cheese with it to provide some carbohydrates with a protein snack. So we're gonna go through, make these. And then all that has to happen after this, there's no baking involved. You just have to put them in the fridge for about 15 minutes before they're all ready. So I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna place them in a plastic bag or a Tupperware container, whatever I can find, and have ready to have on hand throughout the week. So like I said, you can make these however you want with any add-ins you desire. So you can add chocolate chips, you can add a certain flavor, you can add vanilla extract if you want it to have a vanilla flavor. You can do vanilla extract with some almonds. That could be a good combo. You can add some nuts based off of your preference, maybe a little bit of maple syrup instead of honey if you wanted to do that. And you can do, what's a good nut with honey? Maybe like a walnut with maple syrup. That could be a nice combo. This is also a great way to kind of increase your fiber intake, as well as making sure you get a little bit more protein in your snack. The amount and the size that I would recommend for an individual definitely varies person to person, and also based off of what you want to use this for. If you're just going to have them by itself, you know, the questions that I would ask you would be, is this to go kind of in between a meal, or is this as a small snack, or is it a small snack, or is it supposed to be a larger snack that'll be paired with another snack later on to replace a meal? So definitely the serving size differs with each situation that you're using, and also person to person, because everyone has different energy needs, everyone has different protein needs, and we all have different factors that influence that. So I'm gonna start making the smaller balls now so I can have them to top with some yogurt. So I really enjoy having the flax seeds added into this because I think it gives a nice additional flavor. I also find that the chia seeds work well to absorb some of the moisture from the peanut butter and also from the water or whatever other wet ingredient you're including. So it kind of helps create a good shape with it. And then of course the shape will set once you put them in the fridge for about 15 minutes. So you can leave them longer than 15 minutes, of course, if they are, you know, secured in the fridge. I'm just gonna place them in the fridge on this cooking or this cutting board. And then from there, once they're at a good consistency, then I'll put them in storage containers. But you can put them right in your storage container and then leave them in the fridge for a while. They'll probably last, depending on what ingredients you're including, they'll probably last well in the fridge for about a week or so. Like I said, it'll depend on what else you're adding into it. But these, for instance, they'll probably last they'll stay safe, we'll say, for about a week. And you're welcome to try to put them in the freezer if you want to make a larger volume of them. Just kind of increase the proportion, and maybe you put them in the freezer, and then when you're about ready to eat them, put them in the fridge for a day or so to let them thaw out a little bit. Okay, so these are them ready to be prepped in the fridge. So I'm going to put them in there, and I'll show you the pictures on the recipe card when they're all done. Again, if you have any questions about nutrition or this recipe, feel free to send me an email or reach out to your site on how to get in touch with me. I hope you all have a great rest of your May and look forward to chatting with you guys again next month.